Yeah, and we're live.
All right, welcome back to World's Strongest Opinions, episode 45 with Jacob McBride. I'm sorry, we're gonna call you Jake today. We already decided on that.
That worked.
We're
trying it out.
We're gonna try it out. But U90 strongman competitor, strength nutrition coach, clearly a nerd because you've got a chess piece of the Rook on your picture on social media. I'm also a hardcore chess. Do you play chess? Literally though.
Oh God, I was actually just talking about this over the weekend in Huntington Beach. When I was in boot camp, or when I was in the barracks after boot camp, I got a brand new computer and I opened it up, and the first thing that you do is you go look at what free games are on there, and chess was one of them. So I'm playing chess for like 30 minutes on this brand new computer, sitting in my barracks room waiting for stuff to happen. And I'm like, you know what? I'm getting my ass kicked. Let me lower the difficulty setting of this computer opponent. And so I open up the settings, and I'm already playing on the easiest difficulty available. So I'm like, you know what? Maybe chess isn't my thing. So I'm actually garbage at chess. There's a much bigger, stupider, nerdier reason why I have that on there. But I do like chess. I'm just not good at it. I don't think I have the attention span for it.
Well, now you gotta tell us, what's the bigger, nerdier reason?
Oh God. So I'm into like all sorts of and we'll get into this as I talk about kind of my background. But like anime and video games, playing Diablo and stuff growing up. And actually it was from a chess game on the old MS-DOS computer. We were kind of talking about those old computers earlier. It's called Battle Chess. And it was, as a kid, it was great because you tell the characters where to go, but they're all animated. And the Rook was basically the castle turret, as it is normally in physical chess. But how do you animate, like basically just like a tower? So they turn it into like a stone golem. And I always like really identified with that because I'm very straightforward. I'm not like complicated. Like the knight is moving in all sorts of weird ways. The bishop's going, diagonally. So I always identified really well with that. And then like I was big on a game called Diablo. And one of the things I was fascinated with is you could summon up a stone golem and he would do all the work for you. And so I was kind of rebranding. My Instagram name was was Ellen DeGeneres Ellen DeGenerLift, because my old coach said that Ellen DeGeneres was my doppelganger. And I was kind of trying to move away from that because that was fucking
I don't know
ridiculous.
if that's an insult more to.
Right. So I through a long thought process, and I don't even really remember. I kind of settled on that, and it's about as simple as it is. It's really stupid, but that's where it comes from. And my buddy actually from high school just designed that logo for me recently.
Nice.
And he did a way better job than I was expecting when I asked him about it.
Yeah, it looks good. So that's pretty nerdy, man. I mean,
I'm a nerd.
If you're a gamer, man, that's pretty damn nerdy. I actually play chess, but I don't play video games.
Really?
Because they take too much of my time.
They do take a lot of time. And I've noticed that now as an adult with real responsibilities and stuff.
Yeah.
You play a game for a couple hours, you're having a great time, and then you're done. You're like, fuck, there's so much stuff I was supposed to be doing. And then it's like all the anxiety and stress from like having to catch back up to real life is almost not worth, the juice not worth the squeeze or whatever.
Yeah,
God damn.
If I didn't have to adult, it might be different.
That's why I was earlier. Jake and I were talking at some point, and he was asking if I game, and I literally every few years, like every 4 years, like a new Doom game will come out. Like recently, Doom Eternal came out, so what I do is I buy Doom Eternal at like 7 a.m. in the morning on a Saturday, and just keep playing until I beat the game, and then I just never touch my Xbox again until there's another Doom game that comes out.
Yeah, I won't.
Just a marathon.
I won't turn my Xbox on for months. Yeah.
I don't even own an Xbox. I was always a PC gamer, and there's a new Baldur's Gate out that I'm tempted.
Yeah.
I'm so tempted to buy it.
I've heard really good things about it. Yeah.
Likewise.
Because I remember playing that on the PC, and what was crazy is those games used to be like take up like a decent amount of space on an old computer. And it's weird that they've all been formatted for the phones now, and they're the same size as they were on the computer. Yeah. But like it takes literally less than a minute to download. And I remember those installation things. You would get them and you'd just be like, I guess I'm just installing this for the next like hour or something.
Well, you guys remember back in the day, if you were to go to download something on the internet, not only would it take like 3 hours to download like a song,
Right.
But kids today are spoiled. If you didn't finish that download in one go, the whole thing was gone. You couldn't download like in parts, and it wouldn't like pick back up enough. Like you have to dedicate the next 3 hours. And back with the old dial-up, like if someone called your house, it might kick you off the internet and all the stuff. It was a process downloading stuff back then. Now you just open up your phone, and 3 seconds later you have whatever app you want, and you're playing all these games. It's a whole different world now.
That's true.
You realize how old you sound?
So my athletes, they call me a boomer. I'm 34 years old, but there's this running joke now, and it started because I was at work and I was messaging all my clients. I have a little group chat for them on Instagram, and I was messaging them something, and a Teams message or notification came up at work. So I'm like, oh, let me swipe that out of the way so I can finish this message and I'll see what's going on. But as I go to swipe it away, the notification itself clears, and I hit the video call button. So I'm like video calling all my clients. I'm like, oh shit, that's not what I want to do. And so I'm like scrambling to back out of there, and I end the call. I'm like, sorry guys, I was trying to swipe a notification. And one of my Sameta, she's like, what is this boomer behavior? What do you like? Someone take his phone away. I'm like, no. The button is just in a really bad spot. But ever since then, anything I do, anything I say, they'll relate to how old I am. I'm like, I'm only 34. I'm not old enough to be put through this.
Yeah, dude, I'm 44 and I'm a total boomer about some things. I'm cool with it at this point.
That's true. At least you don't do tons of voice memos like Frank, who you guys all got to hear from last week.
I can't listen to him.
Yeah, he does voice memos all the time, and it's like
I do that a lot.
I was like, I'll check a few.
I'm like, Frank, I'm in a meeting, or I'm at work, or like I'm like, not that I text during meetings, but well, I might if it's like a Teams meeting or something, right?
Yeah.
If I'm remote, I might, but yeah, dude, I can't do voice memos. I listen to maybe like 1% of them.
That's true. So
anybody listening, don't send me a voice memo because I just won't listen to it.
What is it? One of the group chats we're in, like people just send voice memos all the time, and I'm like, I'm literally missing out on half this conversation, you guys. Like, you realize, like, people would be like, "What do you think, John?" And I'm like, I don't know, because I literally all it is messages, and then. I'd be like, someone else, can you listen?
That's where I'm like, mute this conversation. I'm not even, no point in sending me notifications because I'm not engaged anymore.
Because we have too many group chats, because I'll routinely forget what account I'm using and just decide to message Darren and Frank and just, it starts a new group chat. And they're like, John, we already have a group chat. Stop trying to start new ones. And I'm like, oh, I didn't realize that we're here. But it's hard though, because for some reason now I hate that it creates the group before you write a message, because so many times I don't want to start a group and everyone gets a notification if I'm going to abandon this group plan. But
it means you have to send a message immediately, because now everybody's wondering, why the hell did you drag me into this group?
Yeah. I've been on that end of it too. Yeah.
What is this about? But hey, Jake, you asked a question before we started recording. I'm gonna get back to it because you'd asked.
Oh yeah, how this all started.
How all this started.
Yeah.
And John and I had been chatting back and forth on Instagram for, I don't know, like a year or so maybe. And one day I just accidentally pocket dialed him and he answered. Like and we just started talking for, I don't know, maybe a half an hour or so. And by the end of it, John's like, we should start a podcast. Because we both had a lot of opinions, but and we kind of started talking a little bit more about it, and he came up with a name and I made some recommendations, and next thing we know, we had World's Strongest Opinions was born, and we did our first episode thinking that we were going to be canceled immediately, and here we are 45 episodes deep, and almost
that's impressive.
Yeah. And things have gotten really.
I think I've listened to most of them at this point.
Yeah. Well, the first one's really bad. We had no idea what we were doing.
It's not nearly as hated as our third episode where we just talked about
that's like when you watch like you get really into a show, but you don't start at the beginning. You're like, oh, let me go back and watch like the pilot episode, and you're watching, you're like, this is terrible. How did this show continue? It's like the pilot episode's never anywhere near as good as when it's developed and found its rhythm and everything.
It's just a test run, right? That's all it is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
like we've decided we're going to do this. We're going to record it on Zoom, and I used my phone. And that was about it. Yeah, here we are. Man. And we just finally met.
So this all started with a butt dial.
It all started
Colorado's Strongest Man.
It all started with butt dial. We first met at Colorado's Strongest Man just last month.
And so what's great about it though is,
or has it been 2 months ago?
It's a couple months ago.
Yeah. Because the nice thing is, this show actually provided perfect ammunition for all the time at work. They'd like debate going back into the office because they're like, people just like, they don't make the same kind of connections and stuff, like working remotely. Like, it's just not the same as the office. And I was like, I have a podcast with a friend who I've never met in person, and we talk all the time. Like, I was like, this is objective proof right here that you don't need to be in an office to make connections. And they were like, well, maybe that works for you, but not other people. And I was like, the culture you're missing out on is a cubicle with an office that's kept at like 74 degrees, which is too cold when you're just sitting there. Like,
oh God, you think that's too cold? I'd be sweating my ass off.
Oh man, that's true. I actually like it real hot in the house, but we've started doing it less.
Yeah, that's why you get along well in Texas and I wouldn't.
Oh yeah, Texas is like, I'm a big fan of this heat.
Yeah, but let's not talk all about us, right. Jake. I know that you had some topics that you wanted to talk to us about, and I think pretty well centered on type 1 diabetes.
Yep. Yeah. So kind of when Clash All started, I was talking to Anthony Furman, and he was always saying that the appeal of the weight classes is relatability, because you watch guys like Brian Shaw and these just monstrous, Tom Stoltman type guys that are, 6'6" and 340 pounds. And yeah, it's fun to watch these incredible feats of strength they're doing, but they're not relatable. Like the average person is about 200 pounds. And so when he kicked off, Clash on the Coast, which obviously, Darren, you're very familiar with, the whole idea was these 105 guys, like that's roughly maybe a little bit bigger than the average guy, but fairly close to the average guy. And so there's a relatability aspect there. And honestly, you look at the weights now.
In most sports, actually.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, both my roommates are MMA fighters, so we talked about that recently. But relatability is a big appeal for the weight classes. And if you look at the numbers now, I was talking to Tyler Purdue, who owns PSL now earlier today, and it's like, we're looking at maybe having 6 guys pull 800 pounds plus at this PSL U90 Pro in a couple weeks from now, which is insane. Like, so the smaller guys are still really strong, and they just never really had a way to showcase it. But talking to him about that and the relatability and it's opened my eyes recently too, especially when I get cut down for these shows where I get a lot of people messaging me from like back that I went to high school with, guys I was in the Navy with, people I haven't talked to in a long time. And they'll reach out and be like, oh, I've been following your progress. I'm really inspired by what you do. I wish I could do that. And the common phrase that always makes me laugh or roll my eyes or whatever I'm doing is, I wish I could do that. I'm just not built for that. And I'm always sitting here like, man, if this motherfucker, like if he knew me 20 years ago, like I wasn't built for this at all. And so through kind of talking to some of these people and trying to encourage people, I've realized like who I am now versus like, because I think people look at guys like us and they think like maybe we busted out of the womb and we were already, bench pressing, 225 pounds or whatever. But that's not the case at all. My background is as far away from this as you could possibly get. As a kid, I was like, not like, I didn't get anxiety. I was like sheer terrified of like cats and dogs. I had this thing with germs where I was like, I was uncomfortable in a lot of situations. Like I would go to my grandma's house for a party, like a family party, and I couldn't eat food because there was a dog there and like the dog hair. Like I had this weird thing, but I could eat dessert just fine. And so my diet was shit. I was a scared little, bitch or whatever. Like I had this very different background from like the kind of way that people might perceive me now. And I remember, they do the allergy test when you're getting tested for allergies, where they poke your arm up and down. They do like 2 rows on each arm of like 40 different tests. And I was allergic to like everything, but we didn't know I had these allergies until I was in like 2nd grade. Cause I'm from a small town in upstate New York. And so for the first like 9 years of my life, like, oh, he just has a really weak immune system. He's going to be sick a lot. And so like, I couldn't play sports because my eyes would swell up if it was spring or fall, which is when most sports happen. So I couldn't really spend a lot of time outside. I was sick all the time. I remember I'd always get letters home from school every single year that if I missed another day of school, I was going to get held back because I was missing so many. It was a pretty regular thing for me to wake up in the middle of the night and I was coughing so much. I'm throwing up everywhere. My mom was up all night with me, taking care of me. Like I was just a really weak, really sick kid. Going into high school, I was in bad shape. I was getting pretty fat. So my dad, he had me start running. We had a treadmill downstairs. And so that was kind of how I found an individual sport like athletics. I always played soccer, basketball and stuff, but I was always sick. I was always, rubbing my nose on my sleeves and stuff. I'm just, like I have a really bad cold the entire season type of thing. But running is kind of how I got into individual performance athletics. And then, that kind of went okay. And then my senior year of high school, here I am, 18-year-old grown ass man, captain of the track team. I can't even do a single pull-up. When I say I can't do a pull-up, I mean, like, you can't even tell I'm trying to do a pull-up because I'm hanging from the bar and I'm pulling and there's not even a bend. Like, it's not that I'm not finishing the pull-up. I'm pulling and I'm just sitting there. Like, I had no strength in my arms at all. And I didn't like that. As someone that had been putting all this time into working out and stuff, obviously as a long distance runner, it's different strength, it's different performance, but it really didn't sit well with me that I had no physical strength. So my dad was on the SWAT team for the FBI at the time. So I watched him go through this crazy physical transformation. And I wanted to kind of go on the same path. He was like, Dad, like you're doing all these pull-ups in the backyard, you're, lifting these weights. Like how did you get like this? He was like, oh, well, for the SWAT team, we do these CrossFit workouts. And this is back before any like Reebok sponsorship or anything like that. CrossFit was just a really crappy HTML website with a workout listed every day. And we didn't have the equipment at home to do it. So it wasn't until I was in the Navy that I was able to do that. But that was kind of my intro to strength training was CrossFit. I did that for a couple of years. I did have my best friend from high school, John Washington. He took me into the gym a couple of times between high school and college, but our schedules didn't really align. So I went for a few weeks and then that kind of fell off. So yeah, I was a small kid. I was a skinny kid. I could run a 5-minute mile, but I couldn't do a pull-up. Like, 120-pound bench was like my 1 rep max the first time I went to the gym. Like, I do not come from a strength background. I was not a big guy growing up. We did, in gym class, we'd have a unit where you choose between weightlifting or like, Tai Bo, which is like the weird, like not acrobatics, but this weird like yoga type
it's
thing.
Like kickboxing, isn't it, Tai Bo?
Yeah, something like that, where you're doing like shadow boxing to an instructor's thing, and you're doing like certain. And I would always choose that because weightlifting was like, oh, I don't lift weights. That's terrifying. Like that's not me. So the way that I started and the way that I am now are night and day different. So I'm always telling people individually, like, hey. You might not be built for it right now, but you build yourself into this. If this is what you want to do, you got to leave your comfort zone. You got to, be used to doing something different and being intimidated and not knowing what you're doing and just putting in the effort to learn and putting in the effort, like putting in the reps, and you build yourself into something like this. But yeah, like I told you guys, I was in the Navy. So type 1 diabetes used to be called juvenile diabetes. Just, it used to be you get it as a kid. And unfortunately, I mean, this is probably should be pretty alarming to a lot of people, but it's becoming more common for it to be seen in adults. And so I was diagnosed in 2021. So basically, and I'm going to warn you, this is going to make me a little emotional going through this, but it was April 2021, I think. They, being a strongman, we need to monitor our blood pressure. And with the pandemic, I'm not going to the doctor anymore. All the visits are e-visits and stuff. So I'm like, you know what? I should get a blood pressure monitor for at home so I can, do the responsible thing and monitor my blood pressure. And I don't know if I was doing it wrong or what. I got a bigger sleeve because I had bigger arms. This is when I was still a 105 guy, but my blood pressure read like through the fucking roof. Like it was super high. was like, oh, it's really not that high. So I must be doing something wrong. Let me make a doctor's appointment so I can get it checked just to be safe.
Wait, so
I
it
made a
was
doctor's
super high at home, or it was high? It was higher than what it was
at
actually
home.
reading.
No, it was. I went on Google to see what the numbers meant, and it said if your numbers are this, you should go to the hospital right away. And I was like, I don't think that's actually what it is. Let me schedule a doctor's appointment. And at the doctor, my blood pressure was fine. But like, you know what? We ordered all this blood work because we were concerned by what you said. Do you want to get the blood work anyway? I was like, oh, Strongman. Of course I want to get blood work anytime it's available. Let's do it. And a couple of days later, they call me up and they're like, hey, all your numbers are great except for your A1C. I was like, I don't even know what an A1C is. What does that mean? Like, oh, that means you have diabetes. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. I was like, I'm 34 years, or I was 32 at the time. I was like, I'm 32 years old and I'm very active, so I'm not at risk for type 2 diabetes. And I went and without insurance coverage or anything like that, I went and got my own blood work done to retest my A1C because they wouldn't take it a second time. They're like, no, this is reliable. And I was like, there's got to be something wrong here. And my A1C was even higher. It was 8.3. Diabetes, I believe, is 6.4, something like that, is where they say you're diabetic. So I was well above that. And so I go back and, they're like, as an adult that develops type 1 diabetes, it can take a long time for your body to stop making insulin. It could be days, it could be weeks, months, it could even be years. So we're not going to put you on insulin until your body stops making insulin. It's like, okay, cool. Like, whatever, we'll keep treating it with medication until I'm no longer making any at all. And so I went out and I did the Rainier Classic. This was 4 weeks before Clash of the Corral, Tommy Sharp's show out in Waco, Texas. I did the Rainier Classic kind of as a tune-up show. And the 5th event in the Rainier Classic was a 340-pound Atlas stone for reps. And I wasn't training Atlas stones as much as I should. I zeroed that. I didn't even get the 340 stone off the ground. And in Waco, they had, as the 5th event for Clash of the Corral, a 380-pound stone. So I'm at the gym. I'm talking to my buddy Chris 2 weeks later. And he knows I'm getting ready for the show. This was like kind of my first. This is when I was going to make my run at trying to be like a high level strongman. Clash on the Coast. I saw that as my path forward. I wanted to go to Clash on the Coast. That was my goal. And so he knew that I was really, intense about it. And he says, he's asking me how I'm feeling about it. I was like, you know what? I'm feeling pretty good. I'm going to do really well on 4 out of the 5 events. I'm going to zero the Atlas stone. He's like, oh, well, why do you think you're going to zero it? I was like, oh, well, I just did a 340 stone 2 weeks ago and I couldn't even get it off the ground. So, in 4 weeks, I'm not going to go from not moving a 340 to getting a 380 stone. There's just no way. So I've accepted it and whatever. He's like, oh, dude, just get it done and stop worrying about it. Like, just go do it. Kind of just, mess around with me, giving me a sarcastic, throwaway answer or whatever. And so 2 days later, because I do a 9-day deload for shows now, especially as I get older, I need a little bit more time to recover before performance. So I only had one more stone session left because I only train events on Saturdays when I go up to Untamed Strength in Sacramento. My weekday gym doesn't have stuff like that. So I wake up, I have my normal bowl of cereal, and right as I'm about to leave, I'm like, you know what? I'm feeling like shit right now. Like my head is pounding. Like what is going on? I take my blood sugar, and it's like 320, which is really high. It's like, oh, that's weird. Like I've never gone this high just from a bowl of cereal. Let me hang out for like an hour, let it go down, and then I'll head out to the gym. And an hour later, it was even higher, and I felt like absolute garbage. And that's when I realized, or kind of really started to wonder, like, you know what? I think my body stopped making insulin. So here I am 2 weeks out from this big show that I'm, worried about, and my body has decided that this is the time to stop making its own insulin. So I go. Sorry.
Take your time, man.
So I go take a nap. I wake up 6 hours later. Blood sugar is still really high. And so I'm laying in bed. I feel like absolute shit. I'm just scrolling through social media. And Chris's wife, Angel, made a Facebook post that Chris had passed away. So 2 weeks out from the show, my body stopped making insulin, and my training partner, Chris, took his own life. And my last conversation with him ever was about this Atlas stone that I'm going to zero. So I go to the show, and, fifth event comes up, and I walk out. I'm like, you know what? I'm probably not going to move the stone anywhere. It's probably not coming off the ground. But for 60 seconds, I'm going to give it all the effort that I have. And my good buddy and now coach, Tyler Young, I didn't ask him to, but he took a video. He was there doing the log world record attempt. And I'm so glad that he videoed it, because nothing I ever do in strongman will be anywhere near as powerful as that for me. But about 30 seconds, I'm fighting the stone. It's not fucking moving, but I'm sitting there trying to get it. And finally I get it off to about my knees, and I drop it because I strained my right pec in the lift. And you can see in the video, I step back and I'm like moving around like, oh man, that really hurts. But the 60 seconds wasn't up. So I get back down on the stone, I lap it, I load it. And so I finished the stone event. It's the fifth event, the show's over. I immediately just walk out to the lobby of this convention center where Tommy Sharp's having the show, and I just fall all the way apart for like 15 minutes. And the whole time it was just, this is my last conversation with Chris. And, I had this diabetes thing come up unexpectedly at the worst time. My body's not making insulin anymore and stuff, but I had to do that. And it was just, and there's been so many, like, I'm not trying to say that getting diabetes is a good thing, but there's been so many powerful experiences like that since. I remember I did just like a for fun powerlifting meet in Untamed Strength, maybe 8 months later. I just lined up with my schedule. I had nothing strongman going on. So I'm like, let me hop into a powerlifting meet, see what I can do. And, I do the deadlift event with no shirt on, because, with a deadlift, you only have to wear the singlet. You wear a shirt for squat and bench, and then it's whatever you want to do. And this lady comes up to me after I do my last deadlift, and she's like, hey, I'm sorry, I'm in the warm-up area. So, she's not even supposed to be back there. It's like, hey, I just wanted to thank you. And I'm like, thank me for what? And she's like, you got the Dexcom on your arm. I was like, oh, yeah, I'm type 1 diabetic. She's like, yeah. Fuck, man. Sorry. In this case, it's like good emotions, but she's like, yeah, my son is in high school. He's a type 1 diabetic. He's having a lot of trouble with the equipment. Like, he feels really self-conscious about it. He's really embarrassed by it and all that stuff. It's like, I sent him a picture of you deadlifting 700 pounds with Dexcom right in the middle of your arm in front of a bunch of people. And she said he thought it was the coolest thing ever. So it's like, that was another situation where I fell apart completely. So like, inspiring somebody else, like giving somebody else hope like that, is not something I had ever experienced. Not anywhere near that level. So to find out that this kid is in high school, and I didn't even think about it, right? You get diabetes when you're 33 years old. Like, I'm already completely secure with myself. I'm not worried about stuff like that. Like, I don't give a shit what people think of me. So that thought never even crossed my mind until she brought this up. And I'm like, I'm sitting here thinking about it. I was like, dude, this kid is in like one of the most vulnerable phases of life. I mean, you guys know high school is not, even if you're really good, like, there's still a lot of anxiety. Even the guys that are really confident, high school is a tumultuous time. And I'm like, this kid is struggling, wearing all this weird medical equipment that no one really understands, because type 1 diabetes is so misunderstood. And me just doing what I like to do is affecting him that way. It's like, it's crazy. And I've had multiple people, I've had all these Instagram interactions too, where people are reaching out to me that I've never spoken to, never met. They find my social media through this, these hashtags of the diabetes. Like, they find me some way, and they'll send me a message like, hey, I really appreciate what you're doing. And all they're ever talking about is me just doing what I already enjoy doing. And it's absolutely wild to me. But between, having asthma, having allergies as a kid, being this big nerd, being a former long distance runner, now having diabetes, anytime someone's like, oh, dude, I'm just not built for that. It's like, no, like, you build yourself into it. Like, it's wild to me that people, I don't want to talk down on people. I'm not saying that as a negative, but people kind of write themselves off way earlier than they need to. They decide that they can't do something, and it gets in their head, and that's it. And so thinking about, and talking to these different people and stuff, and thinking about relatability, it's like, fuck, man, I have all these like things that people might write themselves off and think, oh, this is really shitty, I can never do all these things. But it's like, if there's going to be a relatable thing that I got, it's that I wasn't a big guy. I wasn't a football player in high school. I didn't do all these, I wasn't lifting weights when I was 14, like a lot of guys are doing. And God, I just wanted to get that out there, I guess.
I mean, Thanks for sharing that with us, Jake. I mean, that's some very powerful stories, and I kind of relate with you too. I was I was a really weak kid also.
Really?
Yeah. So when I first got into the gym, I was 25, and I think my max bench was 95 pounds.
You got a late start like I did.
I got a late start, and yeah, I mean my lists were terrible. I think I might have squatted 135. And and I've had, I like I mentioned earlier, I can't remember if we were recording or not, my attempts at joining the military, and I was disqualified because of a surgery, and it was a pretty serious surgery, and that prevented me from playing a lot of sports too. I couldn't play football. At least
what surgery was it?
So I was born with 2 ureters out of my right kidney, and one of them was not implanted far enough into my bladder. So every time I would urinate, your the muscles around your bladder are supposed to close those ureters off so that ureter goes through your urethra, not back up into your kidney. But that one was not closing off, and so every time I urinate, it would push that back into my kidney, and it was destroying my kidney.
Oh God.
And typically, I mean, I've had some tell me that it's not necessarily uncommon, and for most people, if it's not diagnosed early enough, their kidneys are completely destroyed by 16 years old. And I think I had the surgery when I was 11, 12.
Okay. Wow.
Something like that. And so yeah, I've had to kind of be careful. I mean, I went through some phases in my life where I wasn't very careful and consumed copious amounts of alcohol and other substances. But yeah, I mean, I didn't start until I was 25. Like I said, I mean, I was probably $165 soaking wet at 6'1".
Yeah.
Started, and everything has come very difficult. And like you said, I mean, it's different for every single person. Like when you're going to achieve, whatever that goal is, it's different for everybody. Because I've watched many people come out of the woodwork and go pro in 2 years or less. Some guys have done it in a year, right? Or 3 years, whatever it is. It took me, I did my first competition in 2008, and I didn't win a national title until 2008. It took me a whole decade. To win a national title. So I'm with you. It's not about what you can or can't do right now. It's what you're willing to. It's the work that you're willing to put in to achieve the goals that you want, and understanding that everybody's a little different. Some people are going to have to put in more work than others. It may just take you a little bit longer, but how much do you want it? And that's what I always come back to. I mean, people ask me all the time, like, how did you achieve X, Y, Z goals? Yeah. And I'm like, at the end of the day, it all comes down to hard work, and you've got to fucking want it a lot.
Yeah.
And that's it. And it's the same with, addiction. I say the same thing too, or whatever it is, changing habits, behaviors. Nobody is going to make you do something if you don't want it. You're not going to make somebody else do something unless they want it a lot. And it's, I mean, addiction. I don't care how many drug addiction centers somebody goes through. If they don't want to quit, they're not going to quit. There's no magic cure. The only magic bullet there is your desire to do what you want to do.
Absolutely. And some people, and I've had this conversation, it's a difficult conversation to have with certain people, that they want to be like a world's strongest man. They want to do strongman at a high level and stuff, but they're really discouraged by the training, getting hurt all the time, or they don't have it in their schedule, or they don't have the equipment, all this different stuff. And it's like, it's hard to approach the topic and be like, bro, like, you don't want to do that. You don't want to be a high level strongman. You want to, if that makes any sense. Like, you want all the glory and stuff that goes with it, but you're not wanting to do the stuff it's taking to get there. You're not, I mean, like, I drive 90 miles to Sacramento to Untamed Strength every Saturday to get hands-on implements, because I train in the powerlifting gym during the week. And I know people that do things way more extreme than that. Like, I'm driving an hour and a half each direction. I have buddies that'll drive 3.5 hours on a weekend to get to where they can train strongman. So I'm like, when you tell me that you can't do it because you don't have the equipment, I was like, there's got to be equipment within some. It might be a long drive. It might not be easy, but there's got to be equipment close enough. Like there's very few places you can live in the U.S. where you can't go somewhere to get hands on this stuff, or even more extreme than that, find a fabricator, have some of it built. Some of it's like really fucking simple.
It is. My first axle was a was a 7-foot piece of 2-inch pipe. Right, it's 2-inch on the outside diameter, and I think it was an 1/8-inch wall. I think it weighed like 12 pounds empty. And I pulled 700 pounds on that thing, man, and it didn't deform. But that was my first axle. I would put double collars on it because I didn't have anything welded on it. It was just a straight. It was just a straight piece of pipe. Yeah. It cost me. I think it cost me like $9 at the time.
Yeah.
It was just dirty cheap. I just went to the metal whatever supply store and I'm like, cut me a 7-foot piece of this 2-inch pipe. That was my first axle. Yeah. It's not hard to get. I mean, like you said, there's a lot of things you can do to fabricate. I mean, my first farmer's implements, they were literally 4x4s that I bolted cheap Sketchel 40 pipe that I got from Home Depot on, right?
Yeah.
And they worked great.
It's wild because right now it's the easiest it's ever been to get into the sport. Exactly. So when people are talking about how hard it is, it's like, man, if you had to do some of the stuff these guys were doing back in the day, like you'd fucking die. Like there's just no way.
There weren't even,
and a lot of it is kind of easy.
There weren't even Atlas stone molds. There were when I started, but the guy that we found back in the day. So I talk about this. I don't know. Everybody knows James Deffenbaugh and I started Strongman together back in Fargo, North Dakota. And he actually worked with this guy, Reese. And Reese had all the equipment. He was the guy that we found. He hadn't been competing for a while. But all of his Atlas stones, he had to make his own molds. Because molds didn't exist when he started. Yeah. Right? I mean, he held the first North Dakota Strongest Man, I think, in like 2003. And all that stuff was, I'm pretty sure, was like plaster of Paris molds. Like he would put like a physio ball or something in it, right? Mold it around, deflate it, pull it out, pour the concrete, and then break it and have to start all over. I mean, where there's a will, you gotta want it. That's at the end of the day. You just have to want it bad enough to figure out how to get the equipment, how to train, drive as far as you need to, train by yourself. I mean, I used to have to break down my yoke, load it up, and I had like a 400-pound yoke back then. I loaded up in my pickup, all my other equipment, hauled to this gym that was in an old Safeway or Target building, I think. And I couldn't do this inside. So I had to go and carry all the weight from the farthest corner of that building all the way to the other farthest corner outside, put it all together, load it myself, train, break it all back down, carry it all back in by myself. Yeah.
So you got into strength training at 25. How did you find Strongman specifically?
I was really fortunate, actually. And I honestly, and I hope this guy listens to this someday. But a friend of mine, he's not the guy I'm talking about, but a friend of mine we were in college together in Fargo. He'd actually moved, I think, the second semester I was there and started going to school, and he was into powerlifting at the time. And had asked me if I was interested in going, and I really needed a distraction in my life at that point in time, and so I accepted. I never lifted weights in my entire life. I'd worked very laborious jobs though. I'd worked on rigs and construction and whatever, so I wasn't unaccustomed to work by any means. But then he found this other guy, and some people may know who he is, Mike Caruso. Mike Caruso was a at least a 1 or 2 time World's Strongest Man competitor.
Oh, okay.
But Mike Caruso started training with us, and he was a very strong guy at the time. He was about 220. I think he had like a 450 plus bench, something. He ended up being just an insane overhead presser. But Mike Caruso was interested in strongman, and we started training it. But what was really fortunate for me, and I think a lot of it was Mike Caruso, is I ended up with these guys, and I was still drinking a little bit, and I get drunk on a Saturday night, and we were supposed to train as a group, as a crew on Sunday morning, and they come to my apartment building and beat my door down. They were just like, "You are not coming. You are not sleeping. Get your ass up. Get in the car. We're going to the gym." And that's the way they were. Like, and when I say fortunate, people like that are rare, extremely rare. I think
they're rare, but they're more common in strongman. There's a lot of stories that are kind of like that. It's weird because it's an individual sport, but there's absolutely in a lot of cases a team element to it.
But I mean, they were not just committed to the gym; they were committed to the crew, right? And there was an expectation that if you were going to be part of this crew, you're going to show up and show out every single day, like no excuses. And it only took me a few times of coming into the gym hungover that I was like, well, this sucks. Like, I guess I have to come. And so I stopped drinking, right? And I actually stopped drinking alcohol for a very, very long time from that point. Because you know, it probably took me a couple of years to decide that I really wanted to do that for a while. But first competition was 2008. After a couple of years of training, I was totally hooked. And then I abstained from alcohol for a very long time, trying to focus on that performance and everything. So that's where I started. I love that story. I love the beginnings, right? I love the people that I've met along the way. Again, James Deffenbaugh. A great human being all around. Awesome.
How did you find your way into sport, John?
I started the first time I did actually it would have been 5 years ago, I guess. I got a job as a software engineer, and they had a gym there and everything. And I never did gym in like school or anything. In fact, I would actually find ways to skip gym until I got in trouble for it. And then when I started gym, I just got detention, which was fun. But I did my first barbell squat in September. I'm pretty sure it was like September 18th or 11th in 6 years. Because that would have been around there somewhere like 2018 or so. And
that was an on-site gym.
They actually had a Rogue squat rack. They had some barbells, a trap bar, like a bunch of stuff. Software engineers actually have a ton of like gym stuff for some reason near there, because I guess like it's a very sedentary job, so you need to like add stuff. Because for years before that, I'd just been doing pizza delivery. I did pizza delivery from like 2011 till end of 2016, where I walked out of my last shift. I was like, give me my cash tips. I'm going to find something. And I just did a bunch of research, and the highest paying jobs out there that you didn't need a degree for, and you could just go to a boot camp, was software engineer. So I just like worked really, really hard in the boot camp that I was in, and got my job 4 months into a 6-month boot camp, which was kind of surreal because we're talking about work as if it's a theoretical thing, and it's now my day job of like, it's funny at Jimmy John's, my manager, Broderick, was super supportive of me. How like he was super flexible about my scheduling and stuff, because I was just like coding all the time and everything. But he was into lifting, and he was like, you should start lifting and stuff. So I like got more interested, like got into like fitness YouTube of Juji Mufu, Eric Bugenhagen, all those guys. Like, but it didn't seem relatable. Like they're all huge guys, and in my mind, I was like, at this point, like I've missed the boat. Like I'm clearly in my late 20s now. Like I'm not gonna be too really that strong or anything. Like, so I got the software engineering job, and it is like it's a weird, stressful job because it's isolated. You're on your headphones and just coding and stuff. So as an outlet, I started going to the gym and just like. I was convinced that I was like because my friend Javi actually, he started working there. End of 2018. So it was September then. He started around that time, and I started just like barbell squat, like 135, terrible form. Just wanted to like, my goal was like, I should at least be able to do 2 plates of this. I wanted to like, kind of impatient and stuff. And it was nice outlet. He actually watched me get folded completely by 2 plates because I wanted to impress him, and I had never done more than like 185. So I did it. It just like flattens me because I had been trying to lose weight because I gained a decent amount of weight, got up to like 215 pounds, and I'm 5'9" on a good day. So it's like not muscle at all and stuff. So I really just like kind of was just obsessed with like getting skinnier and stuff. So for the longest time, I actually dropped down to like 146 pounds at one point, which is very light for me, especially Darren's met me. And for some reason, I'm just kind of dense.
I could not imagine you at 146, dude.
Yeah. Darren, honestly, like when he found out that when we first met, we were talking about something, and CJ Krause, shout out, one of our athletes, was like talking about how he didn't have to like cut or anything. He was like, yeah, I just weighed in at 205. And Darren was like, how much are you weighing these days? I was like, I don't know. I was like 207 when I left Texas. And he was like, wait, you're bigger than him? I was like, I don't know what it is. I just like have a very dense core. But before all that, like I had a little bit of a strength basis just because I did construction work growing up, like
right,
when I was 15 and 16 and stuff. And for some reason, one of the guys there was a super jerk, and he was convinced you couldn't lift with your back, and he was like, because you hurt your back. And I didn't like him, so I lifted everything with my back all the time just to be spiteful, which is why my lower back's just bulletproof, because he was like always blown away. I'd like grab the tools, like grab the whole toolbox, just like no leg drive at all, just like bend down, which is how I guess I just kind of have the ability for Zerchers, because I just like out of spite was like, I'm just going to lift with my back all the time, everything, just because he was convinced that I'd be in a wheelchair at like no time. And I kind of just like to do things out of spite, because that's sometimes the best motivator. But so I kind of like had done that and everything. And one of the side effects of like being autistic is you're just like really tense all the time. So I'm just like very, very tense of just carrying stress, because the first time my first squat was then, but I did bench one time in high school, and they asked me if I wanted to bench, and I said no, I didn't want to. They're like, you should. And I was like, I don't know, like I guess I'll try. Like they were like, what weight do you want on the bar? I was like, I don't know, like I guess like 155 pounds, like that sounds reasonable. And I did actually hit it, and they were very surprised by that, but then I never lifted, which I wish I had like done that. But through software engineering, I got the opportunity to do that, and then COVID started, and no one else was doing anything social at all. And like once again, this ties into the spite thing, because like I hate traveling to the point that my family lives in Virginia, and I just don't see them for like months or years at a time. And I was like, suddenly they were like, you can't travel, you can't be in big groups, you can't do this. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to
travel.
Yeah, I'm going to start going to strongman competitions and like training. I was like, because no one else was doing anything in Texas, whereas like Big Tex Gym was like, even when things were really shut down, they were still like, you'd see cars there. The windows were all blacked out because they just covered everything, which was super dope looking, because you were just like, a lot of the gyms in the area did things like that where you couldn't.
How did you find strongman specifically?
Oh, because of that, actually. My first coach was Mike Lusby, who Darren actually met. Everything. I think out in Finland and everything.
I met him in Finland, actually.
Yeah. So he got me into it and everything, and he was he had some sort of log clinic, and I went there one time, and then he had an Atlas Stone clinic, and I really liked it because it was just like a fun thing to do, and the community was like doing things when like no one else was doing them. So it was nice to like have a group of people, and it was just like a very like kind of like surprisingly relatable group of people. Like Darren and I like just talked for fun of just like, because the main thing is I had no experience as strongman. And then because my coach was like the Texas state chair for a while, he would just have shows, and he would like make me be the judge sometimes. So like I had to learn how to keep score and like all these things, and like had to like help with running shows, and you get to see like just how much stuff goes on, because it was weird to go from no athletic experience to suddenly having to like judge events and like defend why your like calls were, which you're lucky if you got me to be your judge, because during deadlift events I was too nervous to like tell people it was a bad rep, so I just count everything, so people would just like judge and go all the time. They'd be like, they like every other lane the numbers were like, people would get usually between 0 to like 4 or 5 reps, and then on my lane for some reason one time I did take a few reps away from him, but he did 18 reps, I only gave him 15. I shouldn't have given almost any of them because they were just touch and go, but then it came up with like standards and everything, and it's nice to like see the rules about things. But
it sounds like you could judge for like World's Strongest Man or Giant Slide or something.
Oh yeah.
At this point, John should take over for World's Strongest Man. I mean, let's be honest.
It's true, because there was that like this thing of just like putting yourself out there, because I've always been just kind of like doing different things, and it was nice to like be active and have an outlet, because I for the longest time I relied on delivering pizzas to like keep me like some form of activity, because I would just work it's like run. The nice thing about that job is you have what's surprisingly great about it is you have the variability of movement. You're running, like you're walking and the stuff, like, and then suddenly I had a job where there's like no physical activity.
Yeah.
And I was like, I need something
to
do. Yeah, I need something to do with like this crazy energy. And for a while, actually, whenever I'd get too stressed out by my software engineering job, I'd just deliver pizzas at night, because it was nice to like do something familiar and feel like competent and everything, until inevitably I'd be like written up or something, and I'd be like, I legit don't need this job. I'm just doing this for fun, which is what happened during COVID. I got written up twice for not wearing my mask in my car. Two different customers.
In your car?
The district manager wrote me up because I pulled into the store parking lot without my mask, and I didn't have my mask on until I got into the lobby. And he was like,
"What?
Do you not wear your mask?" And I was like, "Not in my car." Like,
why would you in your car?
Why would you?
I was like, no. I was like, and then another customer one time, she was like, I saw the driver pulled up, didn't even bother putting on his mask. He just came up, dropped the pizza off 6 feet from my door, which you did because we just put him on like a small little thing. And I just left. I was like, I'm not going to wear masks now that everything's contactless and you're tipped ahead of time. Like, there's no.
But remember back then though, the fear mongering is that COVID lived on all the surfaces.
Oh yeah, because the funny thing is, because of COVID, we couldn't put dipping sauces in our wings or pizzas anymore because that might be contaminated. So we'd forget sauces all the time. So it also like customers would be mad if like, why aren't my sauces? And I was like, because we can't, like, for a while we couldn't put aluminum foil inside the boxes because we'd be handling it with our hands. So we just dumped the wings directly into the cardboard box.
How did you cut the pizza? How did you put that into the box?
Because they were like, don't touch it. You're like,
how did you get the toppings on the pizza? You just took like a tongs and just threw it on there and hope that it spread out.
No, it was those goofy things where you're like, you just don't know, like, these aren't. We're like,
that's the thing. They were very selective about what was concerning. If there's something that's inconvenient, like, oh, well, that's okay then.
Yeah.
But this other thing.
COVID was so stupid.
So
that was such a horribly stupid period of time for the human race.
Yeah.
I'm unashamed to say that. I mean, especially the whole.
I don't think it's over.
Was like, you had to wear your mask until you sat to the table, and then you could take it off.
Yeah.
As if COVID knew that you were eating.
Yeah. Because COVID actually only exists at like a standing level. It's kind of like the best.
I don't know how much flying you guys did during COVID, but when they would hand out the snacks or whatever during the flight, they would tell you, like, in between bites, make sure you put your mask back on. Like,
only
how much is that really going to do everything?
I only found that United was like really crazy. Like, I was on a United flight, and one of the flight attendants, dude, she was psychotic about it. Like, she was like micromanaging everybody, how they were eating and drinking. Most of the flights that I was on, they didn't seem to really care. It was, I mean, my experience was a little selective, but there was only one United flight. Actually, it might have been two, where they were just like cuckoo about it. Like,
I did enjoy that they weren't filling the planes anymore. That was nice. Not to sit next to somebody, but the rest of it was
good. I just don't think they could for
that's what I'm saying. Right? They weren't allowed. They weren't allowed to give seats next to each other unless it was a group traveling together.
Oh, that's right. The middle seats were always.
I would fly somewhere. Yeah, I'd fly somewhere, and I'd have the whole row to myself. This is amazing.
I forgot about that.
That was the goofiest time, because there was like, I remember traveling. Because it's funny, during COVID, so we went from like never doing anything to like, we decided to sell our house. We decided to get married during COVID, like all this stuff. And like, traveling was the weirdest, because you go someplace and they're like, only 4 people are allowed in the elevator, and you need to stand in the corners and face the corners. And it's like, but our masks are blowing all the air this way. So we're just like,
blowing air at each other.
Yeah. Like, and that was the weird thing.
Because air doesn't circulate around in a room.
Yeah. the best is you just see people doing the most random things of like you could vape through your mask, and I'm like, water vapor. That's how like people are like, oh, it's the droplets, and I was like, yeah, it's water vapor. Like it's not.
If your water vapor is going through your mask, I don't think it's helping at all.
And the thing is, it wasn't like, and I guess like I tend to like consistency and rules, and like Strongman was the only one doing anything. So I was like, I'll at least do this. And the more I learned about it, the more I was like, ended up doing equipped powerlifting for a little bit, which is when I started talking to Dare. Because he was sponsored by Arsenal Athletics and everything. Dude, Phil, great guy.
Phil, if you ever hear this, man, we love you, dude.
Yeah. You connected a lot of people and everything. Phil was really great. Andrew from Kratos. And then Chris and Randy with BeltFed. Like those were like, and I was surprised by how nice everyone was. Like it was weird to be like, I'm not as strong, because I'm not like a strong person in anything, but like maybe by normal software
sports, a lot of times they're looking for etiquette and that you're just not a douchebag. At any of the gyms I've trained at, any of the strength gyms, they don't care how strong you are, but as long as you're gonna, be respectful of everyone else and mesh with everybody, and as long as you're just trying to get stronger, that's all they really care about. And I get for a novice being intimidated going into that environment, but I have yet to see a strength gym, except maybe West Side, which is kind of their shtick, but where if you're not a certain level of strength, they don't want you there.
Right. Because people are nice and everything. I remember one time got huge props for people. If someone had left out a deadlift bar with 6 plates on it, and I start putting away the plates, and someone was like, "Did you lift that?" I was like, "No, someone left it, so I'm just putting the plates away." And everything. They were like, "That's awesome!" That's what we need in the gym. And I was like, "Nice!" Like I didn't lift 600 pounds, but I did help put it away. So that was.
I absolutely hate when people don't unload their shit. That's why I can't do like global gyms or any gym that's not managed well. It drives me batshit crazy. I used to go to this gym when I was living in Williston, North Dakota. That was a gym I told you earlier that I was carrying my yoke and the plates all the way out. Yeah. And I'd show up any time of the day. Every bar, every bench, every rack, the platform was loaded and not a soul in there.
Yeah.
And I lost it on this dude one time. And he's like, he was done and he's just walking away. Like he's leaving. I'm like, "Hey, are you done?" He's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Unload your bar, dude." Yeah. And he's just like, "Why? Somebody else is just going to load it." And I'm like, "You're a freaking douchebag."
I went into a commercial gym to use their sauna before a meet one time. And there was a group of 4 kids. They were probably like midway through high school. There's 4 of them on a bench press. And I think they got up, like one of the kids put up 225 for a 1-rep max or something like that. And they all walked away. I'm like, there's 4 of you. It would have taken you less than 10 seconds to unrack that bar. And bench press is one of the easiest ones to unload because it's all at that perfect height for just sliding the plates. I'm like, it almost took you as much effort to walk away from it as it would have to have you put it away. Like, and I actually inadvertently got revenge on them because one of the deload things I was doing was deadlift, and they went over and they did that next. And so they're doing I think they worked up to like 225 or 315 maybe. And I'm sitting there waiting for them. And they're like, "Oh, are you going to use this?" And like, because there was someone there, they were going to like make an effort to put it away. Like, "No, you can leave it. You can leave it loaded. I have to warm up still." And they all like felt like super demoralized. Like,
I mean, moral of the story is, kids, like, hey, like being, the weight is relative. That's not important. Learn some fucking etiquette.
Absolutely. That goes a lot further in any strength circle than how strong you are. If you're super strong, but you're an absolute dick, no one's going to want you around compared to somebody that's got the enthusiasm and wants to put the effort in, but does everything respectfully in the way that they should.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when I started too, there was kind of an unwritten sort of etiquette and rule that the more experienced lifters, the higher level lifters, got some priority for the equipment too. I remember back in the day, I trained with Mike Burke, and he never expected it. He never asked for it. But man, when he had Worlds coming up, dude, when he needed the yoke, man, we weren't in there fucking around with our 400 pounds or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Let the guy that's got a big show coming up. I'm not necessarily just saying it's, the guys going to Worlds, but guys that have like OSG, Arnold, National, something coming up, and you're just training for your little show. It's like, yeah, you can train, but step aside and give some priority to the people that need the equipment. Yeah. because there's a little bit of etiquette, and that respect goes a long, long way, right?
It absolutely does.
To the environment of the group that you train with, right?
And you'll get it back at some point too.
You're going to get it back at some point. That's the point.
Yep.
Exactly.
And that's the main thing is like you just got to be like considerate of other people. Like the interesting thing is people ask me all the time like how I got to this point. They're like, you don't have the numbers to be doing this and everything. I was like, but talking to people, like that's like it never hurts to like just reach out to people and everything because everyone's like has their own stuff going on. Like it's this weird thing that I think a lot of people assume that like most people in here are just like hard-headed like meatheads who don't care about anything. It's like no, almost so many people in this are like nerdy people because it is like it's an outlet. It's something to do and it's pushing yourself. And in reality, it is one of those things that you can be one of the strongest men in the world, but if you're a dick to everyone around you, you're going to get invited less and everything. Because so we've complained about it sometimes that it is a cult of personality where invites get handed out. Because sometimes you wonder, you're like, how are invites being passed out for this event? Like what metric? And sometimes it is just like, if you're a dick to people consistently, people might not want to invite you to a show that like there's a chance that you might throw your belt into the audience or you might yell at people or you're gonna like because that's also one thing that surprised me.
Man, why would you want to throw your belt in the audience though? You may not get that shit back.
No people and the thing
that was a mistake.
The biggest lesson I learned though is the top level performers. Like one show I helped volunteer at was Tyler Scott Obringer, who just recently like strict press 500 pounds or something. Like
that's insane.
He's out there at Southside Shrink. A lot of times these top level athletes, they always took everything in stride. Even if things weren't working, they weren't bitching and complaining the whole time. And it was surprising. I remember one of the first shows that I helped out, the setting up for and everything. We got the stone weights wrong for the novice heavyweight men's class and everything. And the stone weight for some reason was supposed to be like 220 something. And I ended up like messing it up and accidentally pulled over the 275 one. That is a big jump. That is, I'll admit that was like a jump. But the thing is, the first guy to go up do this, his max stone he had ever done was 250. He goes up there and hits it for 8 reps.
Nice.
And like the next guy sees that and holy shit, pushes himself, does 6. The next guy does 5. These guys are all like doing crazy. And so one of the guys who's last gets it for 1 rep and he's so frustrated, gets it for 1 rep. He's like, this should have been easy. Like, and I was like, everyone else did it. Like, I'm sorry. And he gets the stone and sees there's 275 just etched into part of it. And he was like, the fucking stone was wrong. Like, I could have been doing this.
That's Strongman.
Like, yeah, it's Strongman. But the funny thing is, he was convinced the scores would have been different. I was like, no one else only got 1 rep. Like those guys.
So that's what drives me crazy when somebody flips out because something's different than what the sign-up sheet said or whatever. It's like everyone's dealing with the exact same change.
Yeah.
So if they handled it better than you, they're still better than you. Like that. Like you said, it wouldn't have changed the scores. If someone got 8 reps with a 275 stone, if it was 220, they would have gotten twice that.
Yeah, it would have literally just been like a basketball, like going over.
They're just looking to point the finger somewhere other than where it should be, which is at themselves.
Yeah, because that's what I was
for
like,
why they didn't. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, that's not going to change the rankings. And like at the end of the day, tiebreakers and close things are like there for the people who are like close to podiuming and everything. Like there was like I think 2 other guys who like might have zeroed, but I was like, it wouldn't have changed the results. The top 5 for that event weren't gonna like ever change. It wouldn't have been like a lighter stone would have been better. But the lesson with all of that, like when Tyler Obringer was at the USS Pro International show, things were kind of like haphazard there and everything, but he took everything in stride and just dominated. Like the Viking press was kind of uneven, so it wasn't like it was a motorcycle on a rig that just wasn't very stable.
Oh yeah.
And people they were like, you can't get any reps on this. You can't get like it sucks. Like the setup sucks. I heard people complaining and all this stuff. Tyler goes up there and hits it for 12 reps, and I was like, it's obviously you can't do it if you want to. And as soon as he did that, everyone started getting more reps. But the people who weren't doing well at it were like, this event screwed me over. And I was like, once again, it's that same rule. Like zeroing event, you wouldn't have been any higher in the rankings.
If you can't deal with adversity like that, Strongman is not the sport for you.
It is not for you.
I don't think I've ever seen a show execute the way it was written on the sign-up sheet. And if that ever happens,
very rare. And unfortunately, that's something that is consistent from the bottom to the top, in my opinion. People will always find an excuse and complain about an event that they don't do well on. And one of my favorite experiences in Strongman was 2018 USS Nationals. The car deadlift, it was stupid heavy. I have no idea. Who knows what a car deadlift weighs. I think everybody's wearing suits, right? Wearing their figure eights. And I don't know. Everybody's zeroing it, right? Everybody's zeroing it and complaining and bitching. And our judge was Greg Inocencio. And Greg just like gets fucking pissed off. Totally cold. This has been sitting down all day. Gets up and just reps out 2 reps like nothing. And he's like, shut the fuck up.
I love Greg. I've never met him, but I love Greg.
I freaking love Greg.
Yeah.
That is like a moment that will live in infamy for me. Just amazing.
Going back to what John was saying about being fueled by spite, Greg had to do a couple spite reps to shut everybody up.
Spite reps, man. Just totally cold and just reps it like nothing for 2 reps. And these guys' faces are just like,
yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, it's not too heavy, guys. You just aren't strong enough.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, that's
why like all the novices should probably not be there. Just saying.
Yeah.
That is one of those things that there are so many people. And I did briefly get some slight revenge on the guy who bitched at me about the stones and everything, because he was also convinced that we misloaded the farmer's handles for time and everything. And he was like, that's too heavy and everything. And I went over and just like picked him up and held it for 5 seconds. And I was like, it feels like 220 of hand. Like, it feels like 220 of hand. And I was like, we're going to do this. I'm not going to fight with you. Like, we're not going to measure like, they're just shitty handles and we're just putting a bunch of plates on them. Like, if other people can do this, and that's the thing, like I can see complaining if like no one does the event, like if everyone zeros and there's some mechanical issue. Like I have been actually, that was the USS Pro International where they had a truck pull and an emergency thing like we talked about in Derek Owens episode. For trucks, if they're in neutral, you have to, like, the brakes are automatically applied. The airlock brakes, if you turn it off, it's not going to, like, for safety reasons, you're never going to have a truck that's just going to sit, like, in a completely neutral thing. So it's completely off in neutral. And I was like, sounds like the air brakes are on. And they were like, no, it's not. And
what actually happens is that there is a pull for the air brakes to lock. But when it's off, the air compressor is not running. So every time you step on the brakes, it's releasing air, and there's a safety mechanism that when the air pressure drops below a certain PSI, that's when they automatically lock up.
Oh, okay.
And so you leave it off and in neutral, you'll be fine for a while. But every time you step on the brakes, right, every time you stop at the end and put it back, you lose an air pressure, and it's eventually going to hit that low PSI trigger, and the brakes are going to lock up.
And
so you turn it back on and.
Truck pulls are always weird things. I've seen events where that one, it didn't work for the 2 women who did it and the first man who did it. And then I was like, turn the engine on. Let's just turn it on. Let's just see what happens. The next guy gets like 13 feet. But I've seen other events where you have the person who was in the truck for some reason thinking they needed to like tap the brakes or try to adjust the wheel midway. And you're like, that's screwing up the athlete. Like you trying to like tilt the wheel to like, or like, what is it? One truck pull, I saw someone hit like the person who was, there was some crazy thing where the rope somehow got in front of the truck and everything, like a loose end part of it and everything just like stuck there and everything. And I'm like, you need to move that out of the way. Like but the brake thing drives me insane because I've seen it happen before where you're like, you don't do the brakes for anything. There's no like because there's no way to gauge, like, if you're trying to make it harder for people or something, there's no like actual measurable way to say, like, are the brakes being equally applied for everyone? Also, why do you need to do
They
that?
should never be being applied while you're pulling.
Yeah, you should.
Period. That's a bad idea.
No.
Dude, I remember doing this. It was like a big van, like arm over arm, and we were pulling them in reverse for some reason, which I didn't understand, because then the driver just couldn't. They were just completely blind. They don't know what's going on. They're waiting for somebody to signal to them. But I'm like pulling, and the brake lights come on. Like pulling. I'm like, I'm losing my shit. Like, what are you doing? And it was heavy already to begin with.
Yeah. Oh my god.
I'd lose my mind over that. But it is
Strongman has no standards.
And that's hard, because I think hopefully things are changing, but it is like,
it seems like they are.
It's I
slowly,
think so.
But
enough people, slowly but surely. There's like some things out there and stuff.
I've been around so long. I'm like, I have my doubts.
Actually,
I've heard this story before.
Surprise announcement, though. We're gonna break the news to the people. Our man here, Darren, is actually doing OSG this year.
Oh, I am.
Really?
Yeah, he's registered.
105.
Got his hotel and
105. Open 105.
Oh,
I'm a never masters. I will never do masters strongman, and I may only ever do masters Highland Games, because it's international worlds. That might be awesome, but
so OSG, I'll have to meet you in person there.
Yeah, well, you're doing the Olympics. You're doing the Olympic City next year too, right? In Colorado.
I'm doing Olympic City as a 105 in the pro division.
I will also be doing that.
I saw that.
For that too. Yeah.
Are you getting your pro card, or do you not need the pro card for that?
If it's a pro-am, you can sign up for the pro division without anything like that. And the whole thing is, A, it's going to be heavier. B, there's prize money. And sometimes there's a pro card attached to it. There is
a pro card at this one.
Okay.
There is a pro card.
I just like to compete. I just go for whatever the most competition is. I did a show as super heavyweight 3 months ago.
Nice.
I'm sure it's not the first time, but I think I'm probably one of the few people that has done a show at 90 kilos, then super heavyweight, and then 90 kilos again in the same calendar year.
Nice.
Because now I got the PSL U90 Pro in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. I used to do that for as a 105. I'd do super heavies if it was a smaller show.
Yeah,
it
makes it more fun. It makes it more challenging.
You don't have to cut weight. It's heavier.
Yeah.
You know, and if you're lucky, you get to compete against people like Gabe Pena, which I did once.
That's awesome. He's been my coach before. He's a great guy. Fantastic dude.
Gabe's awesome.
Yeah.
Actually, there was a slight note we were gonna say about that. Is like, Darren and I were actually talking about this recently, that it's impressive when people go up a class and everything. Like, in my mind, getting fourth place at a world's level U90 show is more impressive to me than winning as a U80 if it's the same athlete.
Right. And you guys have talked before. It was on this show where you were talking to, I can't remember who you had on, about once you get to a certain point of, dominating your class, you move up.
Yeah,
that's how it goes.
Because he was saying that you want
that's what I thought. Okay.
You want to find the person who will beat you. There's a great documentary on Netflix called Just One More Mile about this. There's this race that there's no end point. It's just the last person standing wins. And this guy, the year before the documentary was filmed, he did 95 miles because it's just a 1 mile loop, and you have 20 minutes to finish it. Every 8 hours, there's a 20-minute break, but there's only a 20-minute break for that. And if you miss the time for the 20-minute loop, you're out. And everyone's out by and the two guys just keep going until you see people do insane things. One guy wasn't planning on running that day because he had done it the year before, and he was like, I guess he had come in second. He decided, they were like, do you want to do it? And he was like, I guess so. Like, all I have is like a dozen donuts and like my coffee. So I'll need water from people. And he did it. I think he did tap out at 80 some miles. Which is insane because
only 80 miles.
He tapped out at like 30 hours or something, but it was like,
oh my God.
But they said like the main thing is the guy who wins it every year he said, all I just want is for someone to beat me. He was like, every time I win, I'm disappointed because I haven't met my match. And I think that's the way to like keep pushing yourself, because there is this idea that at the end of the day, like, a lot of times there are so many people wanting to cut these like much lower classes and everything. And that's not the same challenge and everything. Like at the end of the day, to me, watching CJ Pierce just like dominate as a pro, like, and beat guys who are heavier than him, that's really impressive to me.
Yeah,
compared to
CJ Pierce is a very impressive individual.
He is. And I think
he's one of my closest friends in the sport of strongman. I talk to him all the time. Just saw him over the weekend for Huntington Beach. Phenomenal person, phenomenal athlete.
Yeah, so impossibly explosive. Watching him do that axle medley, 12 reps, and the way he just catches and throws it back up, it's weird because you physically almost can't comprehend that.
Without a belt,
without a belt, without wrist wraps, he had nothing.
Because he does that style where he just catches it almost in the hip crease and then just bounces it, and I'm like,
I've started practicing that, and I actually program that for my strongman athletes because I think that's a good tool to, even if you don't end up using it in competition.
Yeah,
I think learning how to do that, being comfortable with that at some heavy weight, is very useful, and it's helped me a lot as well. And I put it in the programming as CJ style clean and press. They got to give the guy credit.
Yeah, because I mean he's really the only one that does that.
Yeah.
I mean, or he's definitely the one that started it by all means.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But his thing of like going up, because I think there is this idea of like people like will either just stay in the same class for too long. And it was great when CJ put out that article. And it's funny because he didn't realize he was writing about himself. But it was that idea of like at some point the returns are less. And I think for many people, unless you're like, and even now, I think going for a world record and everything, like cutting super intensely all the time, after a while, it's just like, I don't know. I like seeing athletes like reach their full potential rather than like having this class, because realistically, U80 is pretty light, and I don't want to be like a gatekeeper or anything. But if you're below 5'8", like maybe you should be a 180 guy, but like or U80. But for most people, that's just too light. And everything.
Yeah,
Darren has some good posts about
you can't grow if you don't challenge yourself. I have an athlete up in Oregon. He can walk in. Sometimes I won't have my athletes prep for show. I think prepping for every show you do is stupid, and maybe that's controversial. I prep for the big shows, but a lot of shows I show up to and I haven't touched any of the implements, even though they're at my gym, because it's like I'm just going in here to see what I can do. And if you're training strongman correctly, you should be able to do a local level show and do pretty well without training those events. So if my guy's like, hey, coach, I'm doing a local show on this date. I'm like, okay, well, we're not going to prep you for that. We're working on this other one. You can go do what you do. And he'll go in and he might go up a weight class. He stomps everybody. I'm like, bro, you got to stop doing local shows. You got to start going up a level, because you're not going to grow if you keep rolling in and just steamrolling people.
100%.
And that's the main thing.
If you're going to grow, you have to challenge yourself.
My favorite saying, and interpret it how you will, is if you surround yourself by 9 idiots, you're sure to be the 10th.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's the main thing, is like you got to keep pushing yourself. And Darren, actually, when you say you don't have people train for every show, Darren had an interesting point a while back that like if you're doing a 12-week training block for a show, maybe you shouldn't compete as a novice.
Well, when that's for novice specifically,
but for novice, but it is that idea, because I think trying to challenge yourself, it's interesting when you have this concept for people that they'll like only do a comp if they know they can hit every implement for a certain amount of reps.
Which is also so stupid. Yeah.
Because I hear people all the time that they're like, I don't know if I want to do it if I like can't get at least 3 reps at comp weight. Yeah. And I'm like, that's just do it. Because oftentimes you see people do those surprising things of like watching my friend James Johnson who's never done more than a 250-pound stone, do a 275-pound stone for 8 reps. Like that was insane to watch, and to just be like, at that point, and a part of it is like we're talking about it in some group channel of like how much of lifting is a mental thing of like deadlifts especially and stuff. Like it's crazy to like the time in December at Frank had a deadlifts and donation show that I did. Like it's weird because he asked what I thought I was going to hit, and I had hit 500 pounds in a metal jack, or the real awful metal one that's like too tight and just like crushes the life out of you.
That's the one I'm using right now.
Yeah,
I'm gonna order one. I think my old metal is worn out.
because they do wear out, actually. Like, they do have finite uses, which is for like a lot of people, and I'll actually, like, I would say that that's why you shouldn't be training in your suit all the time, because you want it to maintain some of its form. But I hit 500 pounds one time in it, but this was going to be a raw thing, and I was going to do no straps, just my belt. And Frank was like, "What are you hitting?" in our group chat, and I was like, "I don't know. I think probably 505. That's probably the jump and everything." And he was like, "Really?" Like, I was like, and it's weird because mentally, I didn't sleep that well and everything, but in the morning, I just felt super confident and warming up with everything. Like 405 felt like nothing. So I was like, I think I'm going to go for it. And he did 40-pound jumps. So the next jump was 545, which sucks because I really wish I had hit something in between there, because I got it to my knees. But like a 40-pound PR would be quite a bit on the deadlift. But it was the mental thing. Like, it's weird because mentally, how I convinced myself was like, this feels good. And I've done the reverse to myself, actually, at a show where one time it was calibrated plates and it was 3 reps. And in my mind, I was like, 315 feels awfully heavy, is some thought that got stuck in my head. That's not 315. But in my mind, suddenly, like, I did sabotage myself, because suddenly I was like, something's off right now. And
so that reminds me of one of my favorite sayings, which is, he who thinks he can and he who thinks he can't are both usually right.
Yeah.
Meaning whatever attitude you go into it for, that's going to have a huge effect on the outcome. I would also argue that somebody that preps for every show they do, 2 to 3 months for every single show, is, in my opinion, is not a strongman athlete, because a show has 5, maybe 6 events, and there are way more events than that in strongman. So if you're only ever training for your next show, you're not actually training strongman. You're training that show, and that's it.
I
have my athletes. Yeah.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just saying, I have my athletes, unless they have a really, really big show come up, nationals or whatever the biggest level that they're capable of doing. If they're doing a show, I still have them. I'll have them train circus dumbbell, even if there's not a circus dumbbell in the next 3 shows they're doing, because I want them to have that ability and that skill there all the time. I'll only take out all the fat, I call it. I'll only trim it down to just the events they need for a show when they're getting ready for the biggest thing that they're capable of at this time. Right. Otherwise, they're not really training strongman. They're training for that show. And I don't think that's a good way to do it, personally.
I think, too, the more of an advanced athlete you become, the less time you should really be focusing on the events anyway, because the form and everything you should have pretty well dialed in. I'm not saying you shouldn't train them at all before any big show, but I've got to a point where there's certain events that I don't train. It doesn't matter how big the show is, because I know that I already know how to do yoke, and doing more yoke just beats the shit out of me and makes me weak on everything else that I need to train. Right. And so kind of going back to what you said, like just showing up at some smaller shows, right? Just be strong. You should know how to do the events already. You don't need to train log press day in and day out. And then to your other point, throwing in, dumbbell press, even though it might not be in the best in the next show, there's diminishing returns training the same event every single week, right?
Yes.
You need a reprieve from that, right? So you don't plateau on it anyway. So I'm a big fan of that myself too. I'll do that pretty regularly.
Then you're always playing catch up too.
Yep.
Like, so say circus dumbbell is not in your next show, so you don't train it at all. But then in the show after that, circus dumbbell is there. Well, now you haven't trained circus dumbbell in 4 months. Now you got to rush to get ready for it for this next show. So you're always catching up to whatever the next show is, because whatever events are in that were in your last show, you haven't done in months.
Yep. Yeah.
It's like, you're not a strongman athlete. You're basically an athlete for each specific show as it comes up, and that's it. Yeah. You should be training everything to some reasonable frequency all the time until a really big show like OSG or PSO or Chaos or nationals, whatever is coming up.
Except
that's
yoke.
when you can maybe dial things in. I don't really train yoke very often.
I don't either. I stopped, and I've actually done way better.
Yeah.
I've done way better in competition after I stopped training it.
It was actually hearing people like you say that I stopped training yoke pretty much ever, unless it's, I'll train it kind of light when it's coming up, and you don't need to.
I'll kind of once in a while, if I've got a yoke coming up, and I'll train it light, like you said, for speed, a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
just to like re-familiarize myself with it. Not that I'm going to figure out how to walk a yoke. But yeah, man, my best performances with heavy yokes have been not running heavy yoke, just being strong. I mean, having a good foundation and a good base is going to take you a lot further than running heavy ass yokes. I don't know how people do that and still manage to train. And deadlift is actually kind of the same way for me too. The stronger I got with deadlift, the more it took out of me for other freaking lifts.
Deadlift and yoke are two of the hardest to recover from out of everything that we do.
So brutal on your CNS.
Oh, absolutely.
And you'll see it too of like many people. You can always almost tell like for a lot of strongmen act like it's kind of this like Sophie's choice situation where it's like, are you good at overhead pressing or are you good at deadlifting? Because it's like the more you deadlift, like I actually have been pressing more, so it's good because you've been encouraging me when I was like, when I hurt my knee, I was like, shit, I have to press and pressing sucks. Turns out you can get better at something if you just do it.
Oh yeah,
everything. But it's really easy to like. I think, and you touched on it earlier, is that concept of kind of like self gatekeeping of being like, I'm bad at this, so I don't do it. And it's interesting, like when you think, say in like Japan or some other cultures, they don't have that concept of I'm not a math person, so I just don't do math. It's like everyone's like, you're gonna do it till you're good at it. And it almost,
I think there is a cultural aspect to it. It's interesting you mentioned that, because I think in America and maybe other places too, but I can only speak, as being an American, I think people are afraid to be embarrassed.
Oh yeah, because it is that idea.
To where it's not that they won't leave their comfort zone because of the physical discomfort, but there's also the social discomfort that goes along with it. They don't want somebody to see them struggling with a weight that maybe is something that they're unfamiliar with or an event they're unfamiliar with. So there's multiple different comfort zones that they have to leave. And people are so afraid to fail or to be embarrassed or to look. When I was going into the gym for the very first time in my life, I was more embarrassed to do bicep curls with a 10-pound dumbbell than I am now. Now, if I'm going in to just get a pump on and like, I don't need to use a lot of weight for certain things, I'm probably one of the strongest guys in the gym. So I'll walk in and I'll do really lightweight shit and it doesn't bother me at all. And I thought about it years later. I was like, wait, like doing what I'm doing right now when I was half as strong as I am now would have been embarrassing to me. Now I know I'm in there for a reason and I'm in there for a certain stimulus that I've predetermined. I don't even think about it.
Yeah. You need to learn, like, don't get comfortable with failure or losing, but you have to learn to lose before you can win. And that's I think that's the hardest lesson to learn, right? And again, it's not saying getting comfortable with losing, but you need to learn to lose and learn from it, because very, very, very few people go right out of the gate and win anything. I mean, I lost. Well, I mean, this year's a good example in Highland Games. I skipped the C's and the B's and went straight to the A's. Because again, kind of goes back to that whole concept of, if you want to be good, you got to surround yourself with people that are better than you. I dominated last place or second to last my first 2 games, and it's like, well, that's what's going to take for me to do well. 5 games in, I took third in my last game of the year, so obviously it paid off. But you have to understand.
One of my favorite videos is actually it's a Nike commercial from the late 90s with Michael Jordan. And he goes through like the number of game-winning shots that he missed and the number of times that they relied on him for this or that, or how many shots total he's missed, how many free throws he's missed. And the commercial ends up, it's like a 20-second thing. He's like, the reason I succeed is because I failed or whatever it is. It's like, yeah, if you won't do something. I actually had an ex, she was getting into bodybuilding. And she's like, I don't want to step on the stage until I know I'm going to like win or come in the top 3 or whatever. It's like, that's going to halt your progress. If you don't get out there and get the experience of competing and figure out what you need to work on and challenge yourself like that, it's going to slow you down. Yep. Like, you have to get out there. You have to come in last place maybe before you can really accelerate yourself to that level.
Yeah. I said multiple times to the guys, at first they're like, why are you in the A's? Like, well, I'm like, somebody has to lose.
Yeah.
And whether it's me or somebody else, somebody's going to lose, and I'm going to learn something along the way.
Then the weird thing, though,
the thing is, you're learning something and you're getting better.
Is the strange thing to me, though, is people are too embarrassed to come in last place, But then sometimes those same individuals will brag about getting first place when there's no one else in their division. And I'm like, in my mind, that is appallingly embarrassing.
Dude,
like if I would never ever show up and be like,
I've actually never won a show in Strongman at all. And I'm trying to climb my way up. I consider myself to be like the bottom of the top level now. But the reason for it is just, there's a lot of local shows I can do right now and just stomp people. But the reason is kind of with this growth by challenge mentality. Every time I get to a point where I feel like I'm ready for the next level, I just jump right in. So the first time I was like, you know what? I think I might belong at nationals. I went straight to it and I stopped doing local shows other than to qualify. And then when I got to a point where nationals, like the weights weren't that, super challenging anymore. And some of the guys I competed with already got their pro cards or moved on. It's like, well, Clash on the Coast comes out. Now this is, in my opinion, a lot more competitive than nationals. Like, well, now I'm kind of just barely ready for that. So I jump into that. So every time I feel like I'm like just barely ready for the next thing, I go straight to it. I don't wait till I'm winning where I'm at now because I'm going to grow faster if I'm challenging myself more. Obviously, if you're a brand new, like if you're a novice, you don't go straight to the top level and get like absolutely fucking buried because it needs to be within your capability. But you don't need to be at a point where you're winning before you move to the next thing. You just have to be ready for whatever that next thing is on some level.
Yeah. I mean, winning nationals is very competitive, especially in strongman.
Oh, it is. It is.
And every single year, there's 10 to 15, maybe even 20 people that are worthy of winning that show. But
yeah,
the stars almost have to align to win that at that show. Clash on the Coast, PSL, OSGR. I mean, you name it. Like, things have got to be absolutely perfectly lined up. It doesn't mean that you aren't capable. Somebody else's prep was a little bit better. Their cut went better, right? Whatever it is. I mean, there's so many factors that go
They made fewer mistakes in the show. The craziest thing I've ever seen was that Giants live show where Tom Stoltman and Evan Singleton they're going for first place in the stone event, and they both dropped the stone and both stone. I've never seen anything like that. And they both did it at the exact same time. Right. And then neither one of them won the show because they placed so low. It's like, it's kind of, I equate it kind of like to fighting MMA, where a small mistake can change everything in strongman. It's not like basketball where you take a really bad shot. It's like, well, we've got another 40 minutes to recover from it. Like, no, you could do something in strongman. You could take a bad step. You could drop an implement with a no drop.
Your shot's over,
and you're done. Yeah,
your shot's over.
Because that happened to Christine Matthews or Panda she was doing really well at the U64 show, and like happened to drop the last man standing stone, and you're out. Or like another one was Dan Benson at what was it? Was it OSG last year where he missed? He happened to like miss one of the stones slightly and had to redo it, and that dropped him. Like he would have been close.
Yeah, it's a huge number of
mistakes. So so I'm with you, man. It's not a matter of what your placings are and what trophies or whatever you have on the shelf. It's a matter of capability. And I'm totally with you. Kind of going back to, I really hate that USS invites novices to nationals.
That's such a weird rule.
It's such a weird rule because I mean there is a point where I think people that have earned their place to be there should be there. Like you shouldn't be getting to just go and say, I'm going to nationals when you haven't done anything to deserve it.
Yeah.
Deserve isn't quite the right word. Earning it, right? Earning your place at the table, as Furman would say. But by all means, challenge yourself, because that's the spirit of strongman. And back to what John was saying earlier, moving up weight classes. That was always the purpose of the when I started strongman, there was lightweight under 231 and there was open, and the purpose of 231 was a stepping stone to the open. It was never intended to be a permanent weight class, and I kind of feel that's the same way with the other weight classes. U80 is a place for the very lightweight athletes to start with. The intention should be to move up, and I'm positive that's why there's never been pro cards for them. Is because the expectation has always been to move up.
That's definitely part of it.
Yeah.
It's a tough one though, because it is like, tough. And I think that's the main thing, is trying to like shift that dynamic, because I think the main thing that like for me seeing some of these guys, like in my mind, like if you're walking around at 200 some pounds and you're cutting down into like the U80s and everything and just dominating a part of it, so it's like try the U90s. Like what? Like it's interesting to see how much there's this idea now, this thing of, at the end of the day, because it's kind of like there's people out there who will say like it's all about collecting the hardware and everything, and it's like I've seen athletes who literally brag about how, because I had a coach who would do it, of like bragging about how many medals all the athletes took home, and half the time it was athletes who had no one else in their division, or like when people would be like, oh, I got my invite to nationals, there's no one else in your class. Like
Dude,
there's
I dated this girl a long time ago, and she was in like fitness competitions, and she was the only one on the stage and got a trophy. And we went home and like we walked, I don't remember if like we walked in the gym or whatever it was, and she just started bragging how she took first, and I'm like, I don't know you.
Yeah.
Like in my mind,
this is just, it was so cringe, man. I'm like, what the shit?
So people
like,
that get excited when they win in a circumstance like that, they're not actual competitors. And I had this conversation with one of my training partners recently. Like, if you're an actual competitor, how well you did, how well you performed, who you beat, like, you know, who you were up against is more important than the medal you might have got.
Absolutely.
Like a real competitor wants all their competition to show up in full health, in full strength, 100%. And they want to beat them at their best. But some people, you see it too, where they like, oh, this person, like he's been dealing with a hamstring thing. Like, this is my chance. So like, you're not really winning though. You're beating somebody that's not at their best.
It's not strong.
If you have a competitive spirit, if you're a real competitor, you want them to be at their best when you beat them.
100%.
You're not like, the hardware shouldn't really mean anything. It's kind of like a little like feather in the cap or a little bit bonus, but it should never be the objective or why you're there.
Right. Well, I think there's a good approach to wanting to win, right? You want to win the title. That's the point of Strongman, is to be the strongest person, but it shouldn't be the be all end all of the reason why you're there, right? The be all end all should be to be better than you were yesterday. Period. That's my opinion.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, like, it's constant advancement and everything. And I think it's easy to complacency can just like, it's not great wherever you are. It's the same as when you'll see some people who with like their job or whatever, like will just like coast and everything. And it's like, ideally you want to keep moving up and like whatever you do, because at the end of the day, like we grow through struggle, we grow through adversity, and you're not growing if you're not challenging yourself. Like for some reason, it's like almost everything in life is based on constant improvement and everything. And you end up kind of like losing that sense in a way if you just kind of like get to this point where it's all about just like dominating the smallest, lightest guys you can and everything. Like it's the same as when people would like, because the inviting people to nationals thing, I've known people who intentionally would only ever do novice shows because they're like, if I get first, I'll get an invite to nationals. And I'm like, do you belong at nationals if you couldn't beat the open level guys at this small show? Like, well, that's
the other argument is do you belong in novice if you can double digit all the events?
Yeah.
Double digit reps.
It's the same as like, you'll see some of these guys who will like compete in like local shows. Once you're a pro and stuff, like unless you're competing super up in a weight class, it's insane to me to watch some of these guys. Of like, if you're a U105 guy and stuff, like maybe you don't need to go to a novice show and just or not like a small level show and just dominate those things. Like it can be, it's hard though, because I think some people kind of like this idea of just constantly competing and everything.
My earbuds died. I'm trying to get it to come out like a speakerphone. It's coming out like a phone. I can barely hear you guys.
Well, we're also we're coming on approaching an hour and 40 minutes.
Oh, right.
We normally like try to keep it around an hour, but it's been a good conversation. So
it has been, yeah.
We're definitely way over, and yeah, I've got to eat, unfortunately, and take a bio break. So let's wrap it up. Jacob, aka Jake, for the night. Any closing words? I mean, anything you want to say? Throw out an elevator speech for your business, social media, anything that you want.
Yeah, no, I mean, just to kind of cap everything off, like I said, a lot of people write themselves off. They see what we're doing, they see what we've built, and they kind of assume that we've always been there. So if you want to do something, you just got to step outside your comfort zone and go for it. Progress, not perfection, is kind of the thing I'm always preaching. As long as you're advancing towards what you want, you're really doing everything you need to do, and you don't need to worry so much about where you're going. But this idea that, oh, I'm 140 pounds, I could never be a strongman. It's like, well, a lot of the guys you're looking at that you could never be started exactly where you're at. And people need to realize that more. People need to realize that that all of us have medical issues and stuff too that we're dealing with that should reasonably stop us from doing what we're doing. But as long, like you were saying before, if you want it bad enough, you're going to make it happen.
Yep.
And that's really kind of the theme of this whole episode. This is why I wanted to come on and talk to you guys, other than the fact that, I've been watching your podcast since I discovered it several months ago. Looking forward to seeing you at OSG and probably hopefully both of you guys at the Olympic City Pro-Am with Brando out in, March 23rd?
March 23rd. That is it.
So, yeah, thanks for having me on. It was a lot of fun, guys.
Thanks for coming, man. Thanks for sharing your story. Very powerful stuff. And I'm sure it's going to help a lot of people. And keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. We hope you enjoyed this episode. And don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and follow us on Instagram for updates. We'll catch you next time on World's Strongest Opinions.